Welcome to Scandinavian MIND Weekly, our show about the current trends and events within business, tech, fashion, design, culture, and more, from the Nordic perspective of our team of editors and contributors. Today on the program, we take a look at highlights from Milan Design Week. Also, Luxury 3.0, a new report from Highsnobiety and Boston Consulting Group. And finally, we look back at Season 3 of the Scandinavian MIND podcast with a special quiz. Can't wait. I'm Konrad Olsson, editor-in-chief and founder of Scandinavian MIND, and I'm here with the best gang, Roland, Philippe, Kretzschmar, and Erik, Sedin. Welcome, guys.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Roland, you've been absent. I think you've been in Paris for about a month. That's why you haven't been on the podcast. Is that right?
Not really, but I've been in Paris for the past week at least, enjoying 35 degrees of sun, heat waves, and lots of bread, actually. Gluten and butter.
Wonderful. Any other highlight from, you just said prior to the show there was a lot of PowerPoint presentations, but is there any takeaway from the streets of Paris or the culture, something happening, something you read in Le Monde perhaps?
Well, I actually flew in on election day, so that was a big topic on Sunday. But no, honestly, I just enjoyed people watching. Paris is, I would say, my favorite city, all categories.
All right, let's take a look at what's going on. There's, I feel like there's so much happening right now. We are back in full swing since May, with people are traveling, events are on. In Stockholm right now, we have Brilliant Minds big conference going on. Serious FOMO from that one. I did not get an invite. Perhaps you did, Roland. I don't know. You're sitting here with us, so I'm thinking no.
We are actually partners. I mean, my day job company are partners to the event, but I'm not going. I have a busy schedule.
Yeah. So that's going on. Also, Pitti Uomo, the men's fashion trade show, is in full swing in Florence right now, and we have we will get back and report from that. But we also have a report online. I just want to plug that from our editor-at-large Elena Martini, our design correspondent. She has been to Milan at the Fuorisalone and Salone del Mobile, and anyone who wants to get the highlights can go on Scandinavianmind.com and see what she has been observing. Lots of good stuff. From what I've known, I haven't spoken to Elena yet, but from what I've known from other people, it kind of lacked the real highlight, the real sort of breaking exhibition, breaking brand. But it looked wonderful, and just to be there, obviously usually it's in April, now it's in June, even more sunnier. Beautiful exhibitions by Dimori Milano, also some Swedish elements. The all-female collective Mischiefs, founded by Paula Bjäringer, had its first international exhibition in collaboration with the Milan-based curator Fredricia Sala. We write about that. Also, the Stockholm-based Italian designer Luca Nicchetto had a wonderful exhibition together with Parisian brand La Manufacture. Just lots of eye candy. Also a lot of sort of fashion-related collaborations. Sune and Loewe. I also heard good stuff from the Hermes exhibition down there. I just enjoy that the design world is back now. I don't know what you guys say.
Yes, I mean, I agree. I mean, it's full swing on traveling and design and fashion, and it's just like people are craving for meeting physically, chit-chatting, having fun together. So yeah, I agree with you. It's let's see what the backlash will be after the summer.
Well, the backlash is obviously at the airports all across Europe, because it seems to be chaos wherever you go. But I think that's for another show. We don't need to get into that. I feel like the aviation industry has a lot to answer for right now.
Yeah, I mean, a quick anecdote. Saturday of this past week, I sat at home reading all the articles about Arlanda Airport and panicked and said, shit, I'm not going to make my 7 a.m. flight on Sunday. So I actually went to the airport, found the last cheap hotel at the hotel room, stayed at the airport Saturday to Sunday just to make the flight.
Well, that's what you need to do. In other news, we are rolling out the last few bits from our fashion tech special. We have some stories out this week about Vivideye, the textile print that can be removed without damaging the quality of the fiber. Also, the very interesting research project that help explain how garments could help people with deafblindness communicate. So we dive into that. That's part of Johan Magnusson's fashion tech special. Yeah, we're looking forward to unveiling that. I'm also really curious about the Solane Danish fashion brand. I think they had their show in Piteå yesterday. So we'll definitely report from that. We have our man on the ground, Oliver Dahle, present at Piteå. So keep an eye out for our reports from there. All right, earlier this week, Highsnobiety and Boston Consulting Group released their latest report, Luxury 3.0. Roland, you've been reading up on this, and let's just highlight some takeaways from this report. Always a good read, these reports.
Yeah, so I'm going to do kind of a long intro to this because I think we need to give the listeners a bit of a context. So
yeah, please.
Yeah, so Highsnobiety and Boston Consulting Group have worked together for a couple of years now, kind of defining what they call the new luxury. And with this latest trend report, they label this Luxury 3.0, so basically reflecting, I would say, also the other kind of meta trends, Web3, etc. And what particularly kind of caught my interest was this this notion of new communities. So, quoting here, the conventional model of brand communities is outdated. Brands need a new framework in order to understand how to build thriving communities. We call this new framework the meta community. Meta communities are fluid, dynamic, and fragmented. Instead of speaking to a single archetype or demographic, it is an overlapping ecosystem of many different subgroups of fans, consumers, detractors, and commentators. And what is particularly interesting is how they have kind of defined this then in they have basically identified in the traditional brand community model 6 different areas. So you have the monolithic brand community model, which is kind of made up of a single type of brand enthusiast. While in the dynamic meta community brand model, this is made up of different subgroups with different reasons for being part of this specific community. Then they identified the closed brand community model, where basically it exists for top customers and loyal fans to come together and laud the brand. While in this new meta community, it is open. So, open for a wider group of customers, fans, and even detractors to collect, discuss, and trade. Then they identified the linear versus the circular, where the circular is really where the brands listen, respond, and act, instead of kind of having this top-down or bottom-up approach. They have celebratory versus accountability. So basically, in the new model, the community shares their passion by holding their brands accountable. Centralized versus decentralized. So the meta community exists across brand-owned and third-party channels, as well as across platforms that brand may not necessarily have direct control over. So this is, really where we see that the community kind of takes ownership over the brands, over the communication, etc. So, for example, in a traditional social media channel such as Instagram, the brand would kind of control the flow of information, while in a community or forum, for example, on Discord, it's very hard to kind of control a conversation. And then the last point is kind of extractive versus generative. So extractive is basically brands take more from their communities than they give, versus then generative, brands give more to their meta community than they take. So, I think this is a bit kind of theoretical and maybe abstract for listeners. But listen, at the end of the day, I just think it's so interesting, the fluidity of these communities,
Hmm.
and that it's becoming increasingly hard for, I wouldn't say only the luxury industry, but for brands in general to kind of interact with the communities and make themselves relevant. It's a much more, how do you say, yeah, it's a much more complex system to manage, basically.
Hmm. Well, so let's dive into this a little bit. I mean, you work, you have this as a day job to take care of the Absolute brand. In many ways, we are advising brands from Scandinavian Mind side as well. And you know, this is an enormous struggle. I think for brands who consider themselves manufacturer of things like clothes, for instance.
Mm,
And I think for the longest time, brand it's been like design driven and like just kind of basic coolness. You have something that looks good. It kind of, relates to who you are or your identity or so forth, but there's never been like this deeper meaning to it. Whereas, what this report alludes to, and what any report that comes out the past few years is talking about, this sort of need for cultural credibility, to sort of make a mark in culture, whatever that means, but being part of conversations, having your fans or your community or your consumers talk about your brand or talk about topics that relates to your brand. And I just feel that a lot of companies right now, and I know some of them from kind of the inside, there are a lot of Scandinavian brands, for instance, Scandinavian fashion brands right now that are trying to reposition themselves. There's like new leadership in some of the classic Swedish fashion brands, and I think this is the actual struggle, to how do you create the community where
mm.
kind of there wasn't one before. Isn't that the question, Roland?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, some brands, this is interesting. I mean, some brands are, let's take Balenciaga, for example. I mean, they are,
Hmm.
I would say, quite interesting because they communicate in a totally different way than other big luxury brands. They are quite, let's say, minimalistic in their communication. So basically, what they do, they communicate through their actions.
Exactly.
And I think that's the key here, right? So
Yes.
then you become interesting because actually the content that you create or the products that you produce, that you manufacture, or the campaigns that you launch are interesting enough for people to speak about. And I think Balenciaga is a good example. I think actually Gucci, even, I mean, they actually communicate more as a traditional company,
Hmm.
but still, I would say in the way they do their partnership, in the way they design their campaigns and their collaborations with the talent, etc. I mean, they are also part of this new wave of brands which are kind of making themselves relevant through their content much more than anything else. And
Hmm.
I think then, I mean, it's all about relevancy, right? And I think what the report also covers is this kind of cultural pioneers that, in order for brands to be relevant, and this report is about luxury, right? But you have to be kind of a cultural pioneer or culturally relevant. So that means basically that you not only have to kind of define your position in culture, but that you also have to reflect culture and world events around you. And again,
Right.
Balenciaga is a good example of a company in the luxury industry that manages to do this in a way which is kind of both sparking controversy, but I would say more importantly, conversation.
Yeah. I think I was actually in a discussion on this topic, with uh, uh, people in the industry the other day. I can't say more than that. But and just that Balenciaga is such a good example because it's so easy for, in the traditional model, you kind of like, you had a brand and then you made like a brand video or a campaign or something, like a piece of content that's like, this says who we are. And that's kind of the old model. And you can't do that anymore, partly because it will just get washed away in kind of the constant stream of content that's happening. But it's also like, no one listens to whatever brand, exactly what you're saying, no one listens to what a brand says. they are observing what the brand does, what they
Mm.
do. And I think Balenciaga is a great example. I've never read a mission statement from Balenciaga from the past years. I don't know what their values are, or I don't know what. I mean, I'm sure there's a document somewhere defining this, but this is not something they communicate. What they do is they do a collab with Fortnite, or they do like surprise everyone and do a brand like collection launch with Simpsons, or they do all these kind of weird product placements at Kim Kardashian or
Mm.
Kanye's new girlfriend, or these kind of sort of small events all the time, constantly being part of culture, collaborating with people who are part of culture, other defines culture in different ways. And I think this is the key, this is the shift for brands to
Mm-hmm.
realize, like, we have to act, we have to do things, we have to create little projects that perhaps doesn't have anything to do with the product that we're selling, but your actions define your kind of value on the market. And this is what consumers are uh, resonating with. This is what they're reacting to. uh,
Yeah,
I
and I'm
just
happy
wanted
that
to
you
add
dropped Kanye. I mean, we have to drop Kanye in every episode, right?
he's
yeah, that's
the
in
ultimate
every
ultimate
episode.
example of this, right?
No, but it's really interesting. I feel like this is the proper brilliant minds conversation going on in this podcast. I don't
Yeah.
know why we didn't get the invite, but anyways, I thought it was interesting. You Roland, have you talked earlier this year about identity?
Mm-hmm.
How about how you can have all these identities? So of course that's a big challenge for brands to understand their fan base or their consumer base. Like, who are you guys, and who are we selling to? Like you're talking
Mm.
about. And also, like you said, Konrad, how about these like people in the industry? I don't know what brands, but these Scandinavian brands, they have a hard time finding a community or finding a fan base or consumer base because there is none. But if you look at some of the ones that you talked about, Roland, they just do they do just produce some kind of content without any they don't really tell people what's cool and what's not, and then the conversation just spreads like wildfire on, for example, Discord, and
Mm.
that's where the conversation gets going, and it's up for the fans, or I don't know if you can call them fans, but the consumers or the prosumers to they kind of set the tone for the brand. Because if Balenciaga, if they're in Fortnite and they're also on a Simpsons character, it's not crystal clear what they're about. So the fans and the people wearing it and the people that might not even wear it, they're just fans of it. So, and they're gonna be in that
Mm.
Discord channel. They will set the tone. They will
Mm.
discuss like crazy what shoes were the nice ones, not Vogue, because Vogue put there on the front cover. It's gonna be up to the people being fans of the brand.
Mm. Yeah, and I think what's particular also about the luxury industry is obviously the kind of interconnection with streetwear, right? And that has happened in the last 5 to 10 years, which they also kind of pick up in this report. Obviously, it's Highsnobiety that is
Mm.
behind this report, but just again quoting here, luxury streetwear brands that are able to use fashion as a means to engage with the different cultural interests beyond their core product are seen as more credible. The survey results around which brands are seen as having the most credible communities that echo this, whether it's brands like Nike that engages with sport,
Mm.
or Supreme with street culture, Prada with art. By choosing to be patrons of a space they care about,
Mm.
these brands are seen as authentic players and vital in culture. And I think again,
Exactly.
it's all about this authenticity and caring. I like they use the word caring.
Mm.
Um, and again, it's so evident now that a brand has to really care about the community to be credible. And this is I would say based on this engagement with the communities that I kind of cited earlier here about the meta communities, that you have to really work in close collaboration with the communities to really prove that you are relevant, that you care about the community, that you are part of the community, that you're not kind of trying to buy yourselves into a community, and that you also engage the community members in building credibility, right? So I think it's I think we are at a pivotal moment here where where luxury and maybe other industries, I mean, they cite also sports gaming and fitness as kind of the
Yeah.
next verticals that will move towards this. Yeah, we're at the
I
pivotal
think. I mean,
moment.
I don't think this is unique for the luxury industry. Maybe it starts there, but I think this will
Mm.
resonate with the entire sort of consumer industry.
Yeah, agree.
And I'm curious about the sort of this term meta community. Can we go into that a little bit more? Because this is the kind of the new term that they've coined in this report, right?
Mm.
There was an article at Women's Wear Daily that I'm looking at
Yep,
where they talk about how meta communities are fluid, dynamic, and
hmm,
fragmented, which sounds like a nightmare for a brand to talk to
definitely.
something that's fluid, dynamic, and fragmented. That doesn't sound like anything that fits into an Excel sheet.
Mm.
This is the target group. This is the core. I mean, you have this old traditional model of having these standardized versions, maybe like you've seen this many times, Roland, where you like create like Linda 23. She lives in a city. This is our group. She's the one we're
That
talking
doesn't,
to.
yeah.
If it's if it's fluid, dynamic, and fragmented, it's nothing of the kind, right?
Yeah, but this is, I mean, I cannot go into details of my day job too much here,
No.
but I mean, this is obviously a challenge for any brand. But again, coming back to kind of relevance, I mean, why do you exist as a brand? You know, why do you care about a specific community? What I mean, what do you believe in? All these elements are going to be so critical since I mean, as you say, these kind of there is no single archetype or demographic, right? As they also state in the report. If you have to communicate with different, you know, fan groups, different consumer types,
Hmm.
detractors, commentators, you can't fit your brand to everyone, right? I mean, I mean, technically speaking, you can, because you can obviously adjust every brand communication to every type of consumer, especially in the digital space. That is technically possible, right? So basically, you can communicate, you know, endless variations of a brand message depending on who you target,
Hmm.
right? But that obviously then builds a very fragmented brand experience. So as a brand, you don't want to do that. So what do you, I mean, how can you then, I mean, what's the solution? I would say, again, you know, bringing up Balenciaga as an example, I mean, just stay true to your brand and communicate that endlessly, tirelessly everywhere. That does not fit all the type of brands. I mean, if you're in the FMCG space, I mean, it's a bit more complicated. I
Fast
think that's the
moving
advantage of
consumer
luxury.
brands.
Yeah, sorry, what?
It stands for fast moving consumer brands, right?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, so I think that's in a way it's easier for luxury brands because, you know, Hermes, they're the same for 150 years. You know,
Hmm.
they're not going to change. You know, they just stay true to brand.
Mm.
In the consumer sector, the consumer goods sector is much more complicated.
Yeah, I
But
will
again,
add
yeah.
one thing, and it relates to another news that came out this week also, and that Highsnobiety itself, kind of a meta news here. Highsnobiety itself is being bought by Zalando, the enormous fashion
Mm.
retailer,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think we see this at Scandinavian Mind as well. That basically, in order to execute on this, in order to communicate with a meta community that's fluid, dynamic, and fragmented, you need a lot of content. So you need to be communicating all the time on many different channels. And this is part of kind of the commercial agency arm of what we do at Scandinavian Mind. We help brands with sort of content strategies and help build these sort of content structures enabled to be able to do this. And I think this is a shift as well. And this is something that's really good for our business, is that brands realize that they need to be kind of content first, and we have an editorial approach to how we go about doing things.
Hmm.
And I'm not surprised then, based on this, that Zalando, which has no real commercial need to own a media entity, but I think they have a lot of cultural
Mm.
sort of value to be gained by owning Highsnobiety. Super interesting deal that was
Hmm.
announced earlier as well.
No, I definitely agree. And listen, I think at the end of the day, you have to be confident enough as a brand to let the conversation loose,
Hmm.
right? So I mean that's the point here. So if you have all these, I mean, endless communities and forums and platforms and channels, and you can't control the conversation, but you have to have a product or stand for something that you're confident enough to let loose. So and stick to that.
That's good.
Let it loose. This is food for thought for any brand owner or brand representative. I think maybe for the summer, just download this report from Boston Consulting Group and Highsnobiety and try to figure it out. We'll continue to cover this topic in this forum and online. Thank you, Roland, for bringing this up. Okay, so this is actually the last show of season 3 of the Scandinavian Mind podcast. We will take a short break now for the summer holidays, and we'll be back in August. And now we're going to move into something that I'm super nervous about. Erik, take it away.
So yeah, we've had a great time recording this, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys have been listening and paying attention. So I've done a little quiz. It's a short fire quiz, 5 questions about our season 3. So going back the I don't know, 20 episodes or whatever it's been, I've taken out 5 questions.
That's
for you
what
guys
you've been
now.
doing the last week, listening to all the 20 episodes. No wonder you're not replying to my emails.
And I've been away for a month. I mean, you have a good head start, Konrad.
Roland, I can see you sweating right now.
Yep.
But anyways, and also for the listeners, if you, after the quiz is done, you realize that you got more points than Konrad and Roland, shoot us an email or DM us and we'll make sure to give you some kind of prize. And you're also part of this. But
I
it's
heard a
hard quiz,
rumor
that's
that
right.
even the readers can get free lunch with the editor-in-chief. Is that true?
Yeah, we can agree on that right now.
Let's agree on that right now. Lunch with Konrad Olsson. So I win no matter what. I get to have a nice lunch in central Stockholm.
Okay. So I'm competing against myself, basically.
Yes, exactly.
And your pride.
Okay. All right, let's see.
Okay, question 1. For our second ever episode of Scandinavian Mind Weekly, Konrad and I had just returned from Dubai. So this first question is for you, Roland. During Expo 2020 in Dubai, we both were really disappointed with a pavilion there from a specific country. Do you remember what country it was?
Denmark.
Denmark, 1 point for Roland. And now for Konrad, it's the same episode. Roland mentioned something. He mentioned a possible game-changing moment for cryptocurrencies when the US allowed a kind of fund. What was the fund called? Abbreviated in 3 letters.
I have no idea. Pass. I should know this.
Maybe. Do you know, Roland?
I don't remember. Is it ICO?
No, it's an ETF.
ETF,
Exchange Traded
okay.
Fund.
ETF
God.
fund.
Okay.
I googled it I had a whole week of googling. I still don't understand what it is, but anyways, we had it. So, question number 2. This is from November last year. Swedish pop star Sara Larsson had a huge success with a virtual concert. But on what platform? And before you guys answer now, I need Konrad to first write your answer in the chat here, so Roland can't just copy you if you know it. Okay, we have the first answer. And Roland, do you want to give your answer? I'll read them
Fortnite.
off. Okay, so Roland put Fortnite and Konrad took Roblox. And Roblox
Oh
is
yeah,
the correct
fuck, it
answer.
was Roblox.
So 1-1.
I remember now. Yes, of
And
course.
it was like plus 3 million viewers, right?
She made crazy amounts of money. I think
Yeah,
she
4
made...
million SEK in sales or something.
Yeah.
All right, that was
probably not the-
pre-crypto crash. Yeah, those were the times.
Yeah, in 2021. Good times.
Pre-crypto crash. I actually read the other day that NFTs are expected to outsell 2021 in 2022, even though we have this sort of crash in the market right now. We're still going to sell more
it's not
NFTs
a crash,
in 2020.
it's a correction. But
It's a
okay,
correction.
never mind. Let's move on.
Okay, question number 3. I was very excited in December last year to announce that Josef Fares and his gaming studio had won Game of the Year. So this is a two-part question. Do you remember the name of his studio, and do you remember the name of the game that won Game of the Year last year? So Roland, it's now your turn to put your answer in the chat, and then.
Okay, I have no idea, but I'm just gonna.
So this could be two points.
2 points.
Okay, and the name of the game. Do you want to give it a try?
No.
Okay, so Konrad, do you want to give it a shout?
I never remember names. I'm like the worst contestant in this quiz. That's why you're a journalist. You can always Google and fact check stuff. That's part of you. People think
Exactly.
I know a bunch of stuff because I'm a journalist, but you don't. You look it up, right?
But anyways, the answer was Hazelight Studio, and the game was It Takes Two. Because if you remember, for the listeners also, you had to be two people to play it.
It takes two.
So Game of the Year.
Okay.
And in his
Congratulations.
in his award speech, he said, "Fuck Hollywood," and the crowd went roaring.
Yeah, 40 million SEK into his bank account.
Yeah. Congratulations.
I think you have 40 million reasons to remember that name. Anyways, question number 4. Now we're in 2022. In January, I had interviewed a Chinese car company that had launched in Norway. Their biggest selling point was the battery changing stations, rather than just charging the battery, if you remember. What was the car brand's name?
Was it MG? No.
Neo? No.
Neo it is. 1 point to Roland, 2-1.
Oh man.
Okay, question number 5, last question. So, could be a tie here if Konrad doesn't step up. I had a segment on virtual influencers way back, and I shared a segment on a duo that I really had been infatuated with. And they had collaborated with Gucci, and they had their own NFT collection with Christie's. What were their names?
Again, names. That's like the worst thing to ask me.
I can explain a theory or... God, I have no idea.
It's so weird. My instinct to Google all these names is like frustrating in my fingers right now. That's how you do it all day long. You just Google names all the time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Journalistic instinct. Okay, so no pass from both of you guys.
Yeah,
They were Janky and Googimon.
of course.
But anyways, that's the end of the quiz. So 2-1 for Roland.
But listen, I enjoyed it so much, but it's the worst competition ever. It's the worst competition ever because I was competing against myself, right? if the prize is lunch with Konrad, I mean, that's okay. But listen, I have an idea. So great, I want a lunch with you, Konrad. That's great. But I have an idea. What if a listener emails us and can have lunch with all of the three of us?
I love that the idea of that.
That's wonderful. Let's kick it off in August. So send in your how did you do it? They send in their answers. They can't do that. We just
they just say this. Just have to motivate why they want to eat lunch with us.
Yes. Yeah. So send us a motivation and have lunch with the Scandinavian MIND podcast team. This has been awesome. Thank you so much, Erik, for putting together that little quiz. We talked about just before we started recording how much we enjoy doing this show, and I remember back in was it October when you and I, Roland, sat at one of these lunches that we do have and talked about doing a weekly show like this, and I can't thank you guys enough for keeping up and doing this in your busy schedules. I will say, just plug the latest episode of the Konst podcast. It was out earlier this week. Roland, maybe just say a couple of words from that. I think maybe your best one, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I have to give credit to my guest. Basically, the person behind the art meme, Jerry Gogosian. So if you're into art, if you're into memes, you would have heard of Jerry Gogosian. She crawls under the skin of the art industry. And the person behind Hilde is a fantastic and interesting person. So yeah, discover kind of the insights of the art industry through the latest episode of Konst.
Great show. And as I said, we'll take a short break on the weekly podcast during the summer. We will, however, publish outtakes from the Transformation Conference in Helsinki a couple of weeks ago. We already started this week with my interview with the author Alec Leach. And during the summer, we will publish, panels and talks leading up to the second edition of the Transformation Conference coming to Stockholm on August 25. So make sure to follow our newsletter to get invites to that event. Visit scandinavianmind.com/newsletter and also get updates on these podcasts. Erik will continue working with each other. We're not really summer yet, but Roland, hope to see you in the archipelago in a nice setting. But this has been great. The Scandinavian Mind Weekly Season 3 will be back in August. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
See ya.
Enjoy the summer.